Today we're going to be making some pastrami. Here we have our brisket. What we need to do first is set up a cure and let this marinate for 6 days before we get it into the smoker. For our pastrami, we're going to be using a brisket flat. This is a widely available cut of meat and it translates really well for the recipe. Although very similar, corned beef and pastrami are different. Traditionally, they were from different cuts of meat, corned beef being the brisket, pastrami being a belly cut. Cures are relatively the same. The difference comes in the cooking process. Corned beef is boiled or braised, and pastrami is smoked. All that being said, today we are going to use a brisket cut for our pastrami. Making pastrami is a process. Today we're starting the brine. We're going to make the brine, and then we're going to soak the meat in the brine for 6 days to cure it before we smoke it. For our pastrami, instead of pickling spice, we're going to use our chop shop seasoning, which has peppercorns, coriander, cumin, and we're going to give it a little different take. The other ingredients in our cure are kosher salt, garlic cloves, sugar, and pink curing salt. The pink curing salt is going to give it that pinkish color, and the others are going to give it the traditional pastrami flavor. To make the brine, we're going to combine all these ingredients in boiling water until they dissolve. Our trick is we're going to use half of the water boiling to dissolve the ingredients, and then we're going to combine that with the other half of the water in the form of ice to cool it down quickly. Salt, our sugar, garlic cloves, pink salt, and then our chop shop. Since we're using this instead of our pickling spice, we're just going to dump that whole jar in there. All right, so we want to return this to a boil to make sure all those ingredients are well dissolved. And when you stir it, you can kind of feel those little granules on the bottom of the pot. And if you have those, it's not quite ready. You want to make sure all the salt and sugar is well dissolved before combining it with the ice. I'm going to pour this into a pitcher, and it could get a little messy, so I'm going to do this off camera. Here we have our half gallon of very salty brine, and here we have another half gallon of ice, which we're going to use to combine to cool it rapidly. So we went from 212 degree boiling water to 41 degree water just by adding that ice. So this can be ready to use as a brine immediately. You want to make sure that your brine is below 41 degrees so that you don't have any bacteria growth and that you're not heating up the brisket in the brining process. We are going to be brining our brisket in a bag so that we don't have brine sloshing all over our fridge for the next few days. We're going to pour the brine into the bag, get as much air out, seal it. We're going to put it in the fridge for 6 days and come back when we're ready to cook. Our brisket has been sitting in the brine for 6 days, and what we're going to do now is we're going to take it out of the brine, give it a rinse, and we're going to lay it flat on a rack so that it can go back in the fridge and air dry for 24 hours before we get it on the smoker. It's been 7 days and we finally get to cook today. This has been air drying in the fridge overnight, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use our Carolina Gold barbecue sauce to rub it down, and then I'm going to sprinkle it with cracked pepper and coriander. After that, it's going to go on the smoker, set at 250 for about 3 or 4 hours, and we're going to check the temperature. Got our grill set to 250 degrees. We're going to set the pastrami on there, indirect heat, fat cap up. We pulled our pastrami off of the smoker at 205 degrees. Now at this point, it's been about an hour since we've done that because we let the meat rest. You'll hear this from me a lot. You need to let the meat rest. During this period, the juices will reabsorb into the meat and create a much juicier product than if you would just cut it straight off the grill. All right, at first glance, looks like we have a really nice bark that develops through in the smoker, and we're about to cut into this. First things first, we want to find the grain, because once we find that grain, we're going to cut perpendicular to it so that we get even slices and the most tender pieces possible. So we're going to lift just barely. The grain is going this way, so we're going to cut this way. All right, moment of truth. Look at that. Look at those juices flowing out there. That looks awesome. And I'm gonna get myself a slice here to try. Again, against the grain. I like thinner pieces like that. But then you can see all that meat, nice and tender. Looks like we got a decent smoke ring. And that color is nice and even too. And that means that our brine did its job. It got into the meat and infused it with flavors and kept those juices inside. All right, let's try it. That is super good. It's salty, it's flavorful. You get the coriander and pepper on the top. It just all came together with that smoke flavor infused. Turned out really well. So after that 7-day process, absolutely worth it. We're gonna turn this pastrami into a few different recipes, including a sandwich, burger. I'm gonna wrap some in wontons. So to see that content, head to psseasoning.com. Until then, I'm Chef Jed. Thanks for watching.